Welcome, everyone, to Diversified, where our mission is to have you living a life filled with wealth, health, and happiness. Today, we have a very special and lovely guest, Paige Heiden, who is a registered dietitian from Paiges Plate. Thank you for joining me today, Paige.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to dive in.
Likewise. And Paige is also at the Jersey Shore as she's promoting on her sweatshirt and LBI. So tell me about you, Paige, and what inspired you sort of to become into this field, the dietitian and health field.
Of course. So like many in my field, I feel like a personal story, journey, experience kind of led me here. I grew up playing competitive sports. I was a big soccer player, and around the age of, I would say 11 or 12, I had the skills, but the stamina was really falling short for me. And I started packing on the pounds, for lack of a better term, around that age. And my weight really started to get in the way of my ability to keep up on the field. So around that time was also competitive sports wise around the time where I felt I had to make a decision of, is this kind of my future, thinking about high school, college, next steps, like, do I want to continue playing, or was this a hobby that I kind of let go of? And ultimately a coach led me to the decision of really getting my health and weight and stamina where it needed to be to kind of excel. And I made the decision to dive into nutrition and food and science kind of on my own through the power of the internet, and also the power of seeing nutrition kind of experts and those in the health and wellness space at that young age. And I was really able to just learn for myself really what I thought at the time were just tips and tricks and usable, digestible information to help myself. And I ended up recognizing that there was actually a career out of this where I could help others do what and see and figure out what works for them the way that worked for me. But also, the path of nutrition and dietetics is so much bigger than that. And I realized science was something I was really passionate about too. So blending all of that together, my passion for food science, athletics at the time, as well, was a major focus of kind of going into this. I made the decision to kind of go headstrong into this field of becoming a registered dietitian. I went to the University of Delaware for my undergrad, then moved back home to Rutgers, where I completed my master's and all my hours and schooling in clinical and other settings, and sat for my exam last March. So today I'm a licensed RD, and I've done a lot of work in various settings in just this past year and a half, but that is a little bit of a summary of kind of how I got into the field, leading me to where I'm at now.
Awesome. So kudos to you and it's impressive at a young age to really take that on. I mean, that shows a lot about you and sort of your stick-to-itiveness and drive, I would presume, which is probably why you excelled at sports and academics. So, but let's stay there for a second, because I'm really interested as an 11-year-old about that journey, right? So you started putting on weight and you started not being happy with your health in general. And so walk me through that journey. If you put yourself back as a young 11, 12-year-old girl at that point. I have a daughter who's 10, right? Mm-hmm. So I can understand the wild emotions and everything going on there. But walk us through that journey. And then how does that translate, in your opinion, now that you're a professional doing this? How has that improved your ability to do this and sympathize and what you learned through that? I mean, it's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I love that. And I always say when I am talking about kind of my story, if it happened today, I wonder if things would have looked a lot different with just how social media has evolved and sort of erupted into like this firestorm that it sometimes can become when we're talking about being a 12-year-old girl who is overweight and wanting to look like all the people on Instagram, and kind of like fighting those battles internally that I wasn't really, maybe it was out there and I just wasn't looking, or like I just didn't deal with those internal kind of battles. I always say when I talk about this that I feel really lucky the kind of exposure and experience through that weight loss at such a young age was really actually positive and safe, because I think in today's world, and even back then, it could have had the potential to go in a really negative spiraling direction, being at that age and being a female. But I actually, as soon as like my coach had that conversation with me, I actually went to Weight Watchers, which is like the first exposure to food and diet, which again, I think today, for anyone who's not familiar with Weight Watchers, and maybe you are, Weight Watchers is constantly changing. What's a point and what's a rule and what's a green and what's a red flag and all these things. When I did it, 12 years ago, I felt like it was a really positive experience. It basically just taught me like what the food groups are. It laid a really nice general foundation of portion control. And I learned how to use like measuring spoons and measuring cups for the first time. And being kind of what you alluded to a little bit before, being a dietitian, if you know any others, a lot of us are, type A driven perfectionist type of personalities. And I loved the point system, and it really worked for me. Like it was all the structure and the guidance that I felt like I needed. And then over the more recent years, especially, and back then, I sort of started to recognize I don't want to say problems, but I would say the things that I didn't necessarily agree with how, Weight Watchers really promotes like what their program really is. And I started to figure out like, I want to have my own messaging, and I also want to have credibility behind it and education behind it. So that's why I wanted to like go and pursue this degree for myself. But in addition to Weight Watchers, I also once I figured out being a dietitian was a career, I Googled dietitians. I'm from Central Jersey. I Googled dietitians in my town. And at the age of about 14, 15, I started shadowing, which was an amazing experience. It kind of just solidified, this is totally what I want to do. I shadowed a dietitian, and I watched her work with patients and clients in her office. And she also worked in a hospital. So I saw like all these different settings, and I just completely fell in love with the career. To this day, I still keep in touch with her and always updating her what I'm doing, but she's been a great mentor for me throughout this whole experience.
That's awesome. And now tell us about Paige's Plate.
Yeah. So in college, again, not sure who's familiar with this career path, but in college, once I figured out I wanted to become a dietitian, you can't just go to college and get your undergraduate degree. You have to do that, but then you have to complete 1,200 supervised practice hours through an accredited program. Sure. I opted to get a master's as well. You don't have to do that. You will actually in a couple of years, but besides the point, to get into these programs, to do these supervised practice hours, they're extremely competitive. I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine who was feeling the same, who went through it a little bit after me. But in order to kind of set myself apart, and I was doing all of these volunteer work experiences, and I was doing research on campus and all the things, but I still felt nervous going into this process of what could I do that's just different and kind of outside of the box. And right around that time, interesting that we were just talking about like social media wasn't necessarily big. Right around like my college years, I feel like Instagram was at its prime. Like now I feel like Instagram is lame, and like TikTok is where all the cool kids go, which I'm not even on yet. But
I feel so behind.
At the time, Instagram was amazing, and it was like the best platform out there. And I saw all these dietitians on Instagram working virtually, having private practices from their comfort of their own homes, having offices. And I was like, wow, not only do I love this career path, traditionally, I could see myself working in maybe a hospital, but you could also work for yourself and be an entrepreneur and have your own business. So I created a platform on social, having no plan of where it was going to go, no idea at that time that now I'd be able to monetize it in certain ways or like grow this community. But at the time, I really created it to share my recipes, share my passion, and just try to set myself apart in some cool way, kind of for the application process, just to be transparent about it, which today I think a lot of people don't know that that's really why it was created. And then it became so much more than that. And I started working with brands. And actually today, we haven't really gone into it yet. I work for a virtual private practice dietitian who I met 6 years ago when I first started this platform. She was probably one of the first people I ever followed. And I became fascinated by her and her business and her niche. And now she's my boss, which is so awesome. And it would have never happened if I didn't create that platform.
So you do both your social project of sharing with the world and however that monetizes, and then you do private sessions with a certain demographic of people, all people, athlete. I mean, do you have a niche?
So our niche, population, I guess, age-wise to start, I believe the youngest clients we would have would probably be in their 20s, late teens, 20s, all the way up to maybe early 60s, I would say is the general kind of pool of populations age-wise. And the niche, athletes for sure, work with athletes. The niche, I guess, specifically to our clientele is really those focusing on weight loss and weight management. See a lot of clients who struggle with blood sugar control, maybe have diabetes, prediabetes, have hyperlipidemia, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, hyper or hypothyroidism is a big one, GI disorders, allergies, intolerances, picky eaters is a big one, busy moms who have kids running around and don't have time to eat for themselves, college students who feel like all their nutrition habits have gone in the garbage entering their freshman year and they want to kind of reset. So all different things. But I would say as a general niche, we've definitely fallen that weight space, I would say.
So I guess when I was at Delaware years before you, and the 10 p.m. 5-hour Papa John's is not, not killing. So help me understand, or help the people watching this understand, in your professional opinion, since let's focus on the weight loss, which seems to be your big niche. What's the big trick? What's the hump to get over? If you had to give a piece of advice on the weight loss portion of it, what would you say that it is?
I would say it's really hard to pick, one thing. There is no one size fits all. If there was, the obesity epidemic would not be on the rise and look like what it looks like today. We would all be doing it. We would all be taking the magic pill or doing the magic thing. I'd say the one tip that I would share for someone who's really struggling, if you maybe feel like you're a yo-yo dieter, you've tried this, you've lost the weight, you've gained it back, then you've tried this, you've tried XYZ, find something that works for you, that is sustainable, and that is not a quick fix. And that may look like, for a lot of people, a recommendation I would give is working with an expert and a professional who can be your guide and be your support system and really educate you and lay the foundation of nutrition knowledge that you probably never got. And now you're probably only getting it from, Instagram, from people who might not be credible. So I would say find those credible resources and find a way of eating, habits, lifestyle that works for you. And that's on an individual level. That's going to look different for all of my clients, anyone listening. It's going to look different for all of you.
So really, it sounds like educating individuals so you can empower them essentially to take ownership and not be to your point, the in vogue thing this day. Cut out carbs altogether. Now only eat carbs, right?
If you're cutting out if you see a program and it's cutting out a certain food group, that's a red flag. If it is promoting quick results that seem kind of crazy, that's a red flag. We want things that are slow and steady and sustainable, which is oftentimes not what people want, especially in the weight loss space. You want to do what's going to be the quickest fix, and you're going to throw your money at whatever that is. And maybe it'll work, but I always say, did it work if all the weight came back and now you're back to square one and you're looking for something else, or you're doing the same thing for the 6th time? Did that really work? Let's try to build actual habits and lay a foundation and education so you're empowered to make choices that you can keep the weight off for good.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. Give us some foundational tips, if you will, right? So I understand that you tweak things to individuals based on likes and habits and lifestyle and results and goals, but there must be some foundational things that you go to in your toolbox that say, okay, here's the base that everyone should be going off of.
Totally. I'll try to give 3, because after Memorial Day, I was getting a lot of questions from clients kind of similar to this. Like, I kind of want to refresh, refocus, restart. Where do you really start with this? What's kind of foundational for everyone that they can go by? And the first one I kind of already mentioned, avoiding restriction, avoiding deprivation. The goal is not to eat as little as possible. Even if you're trying to lose weight, the goal is to eat as much as possible while still seeing results and feeling full and satisfied. So eating every 3 to 4 hours, not only for feeling satisfied and not hungry all day long, but also for blood sugar control and overall mood and energy levels, all of the things. Every 3 to 4 hours, we want to be eating, and we want to be eating a balanced meal with protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Again, we don't want to be cutting out, years ago it was fat and then it was sugar. And I still think we're on this keto, anti-carb kind of trend these days, but we really want all of the macronutrients having a seat at the table, quite literally. So that would be the first thing, making sure you're balancing your plate. And that's where, again, something like working with a dietitian can be helpful. Maybe someone listening has no idea what type of food would be a protein, fat, and a carbohydrate. So even starting as basic as that and taking steps back. And then kind of aside from the food, we're not just a one-stop shop talking about the food. It's always a lot bigger than the food. Are you drinking water? Are you sleeping? Are you exercising? How are your stress levels? Getting into all of that, because all of that is likely impacting the choices that you're making in the kitchen or in the restaurants. So putting it all together, getting movement in that you enjoy, drinking water. The rough goal is take your body weight, divide it by 2. That in ounces is a rough goal of where to start with getting your water in, unless you have any medical condition to be restricting your fluids. That's a general rule of thumb. So balanced meals, drinking your water, and moving your body in ways you enjoy would be, I guess, everyone can benefit, and that could work for everyone if it was only as easy as that.
That's fantastic and bite-sizable, right? Which is why I asked it. So, okay, before we end, and I want you to share with everyone how they can get in touch with you and how they can follow you online, which we spoke to a minute ago, but I'd like you to speak to it directly. Any final tip that you want people to remember that you think can help anyone watching this today?
Yes, I love that. And I was just on a call with a client and I said the same thing to kind of wrap it up with her. So I continue to come back to this all the time. We already kind of mentioned bits and pieces, but goals and being goal oriented, especially when we're talking about weight loss, we're likely always going to be focusing on that number on the scale, the end goal being our main focus. We really want to shift that, and we want to fall in love with, it sounds cheesy, we want to fall in love with the process to get there. If you're doing things along the way that are incredibly frustrating and seem not doable and not realistic to do forever, but you get to your goal, it doesn't matter. You're not going to stay at your goal. You're going to get right back to where you were, or even worse, damage, and start over. You want to find habits and parts of the process that are actually measurable and achievable. And when the process is coming along, the goals will follow. To give a realistic example, instead of saying, I want to lose 10 pounds in the next 3 months, I want to make sure I'm eating balanced meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner throughout the week. I want to only dine out 3 times a week for the month of June. I want to go on a 20-minute walk every single day. I want to lift a higher weight class in the gym. I want to eat 3 new fruits this month. These are all little examples. We can expand on all of those in a long, long list. But setting goals related to the process that you can actually reach, we never know what the scale is going to say. You could do everything right. You might not see the number you want on the scale every day. But what can you do that you actually know you can do, part of the process that's going to get you to your goal? Really zooming out and focusing on that, your goals will likely follow. So I'll leave you all with that.
That's fantastic. All right. So tell everyone how they can follow you, get in touch with you, whatever the best way to promote your wonderful services and what you do for the world.
Awesome. My Instagram handle is at Paiges_plates, PAIGES_plates. That is where kind of all the magic happens. You can check out my social, you can give me a follow. You can click the link in my bio to head over to, I mentioned before, my boss, Alex Turoff is her name, her page, where you could book free discovery calls, check out our services for group programs, one-on-one coaching programs, and a lot of free resources as well. So you can find my email there. You can find all the things there. And yeah, that's how you can get in touch with us.
All right. And that's Paiges_plate at Instagram.
Plates.
Oh, both were great. And for those of us old heads still on Instagram, apparently, but soon moving to TikTok. But anyways, yep. That's another story for another day. Paige, thank you so much for joining. It was always inspirational to listen to people like you doing great things out there for the betterment of us all. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And so if you like what you heard today, reach out to Paige, share this with anyone you think would benefit. And as always, I'm Andrew Rosen, president of Diversified. Stay wealthy, stay healthy, and stay happy. Take care.